Today I am answering all of your questions that you guys submitted up on the Instagram and Facebook stories a few months ago. So we're talking anything from quick soup recipes to sourdough questions to even things about the business and my personal life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Making It a Home podcast show. I'm your host, Molly, from the blog and YouTube channel, Plum Branch Home. I am so excited to share with you all of these questions. So I could briefly look through everything, but for the most part, I'm just answering these on the fly. So I'm very excited. The first question is, any new quick, easy soup recipes, easy small sourdough cake recipes for two? So the quick and easy soup recipes, there are tons on the blog. So if you go over to plumbranchhome.com and you'll go to the menu, and then there's a, under there, like the first tab is going to be scratch recipes. And then under that, you'll see a tab for soups. And then that's how you can go and find all of the soup recipes on the blog. But just for a few to come to mind, any of the crock pot ones are so simple and quick, or I guess not quick. Those ones are simple. The other ones are quick. So the simple ones in the crock pot are chicken enchilada soup. There's a stuffed pepper soup. Those are really easy. For the quick and easy ones, so I have a game day chili. It has no beans, but you can do pasta if you would like. I have a vegetable chowder on there. So good. And then what else do I have? I have a potato soup. I have a creamy Cajun chicken soup and a better than Olive Garden chicken gnocchi soup. Those are really quick and simple. So those are some soup recipes. And then for the cakes, so I have quite a few, or I have a handful of cake recipes on the blog. None of them are for two people, but you're more than welcome to take those recipes and reduce them down by 4. So only do 1/4 of the recipe. So if it does 2 cups of flour, just reduce it down to 1/2 of a cup of flour. So take each ingredient and just divide it by 4, and then that's your recipe. If you want to do 1/4 of it, and then you can make it into cupcakes. That way it can cook evenly and you have smaller portions. So that's my biggest tip. But for the sourdough cakes, you can go over to Plum Branch Home again, and it will be under sourdough recipes. And then I have sourdough desserts. That's where you can find all of these. So I have a sourdough lemon pound cake. That is really, really delicious. I've never made it into cupcakes since a pound cake is usually whole, but that's really good. And it's only 1/2 of a pound. I have a sourdough carrot cake recipe. That would be amazing in cupcakes. It's super good and easy. I also have a sourdough coffee cake recipe. That is a great one if you want to do little like muffins, you could call them, or like little cupcakes. So you could reduce it by 4 and do the little cupcakes. That is a really good recipe. What else do I have? Oh, I have a brand new one. It's my sourdough vanilla cake. So this recipe is brand new. It's either coming out this week or the next. So if it's not on the blog, then it'll be there soon. Just keep your eyes open. But these are all of the cake recipes that I have. They're all simple. They're all from scratch and so delicious. So that's that question. Let's pull up our next ones. Okay. The next question we have is favorite part of moving to Middle Tennessee from the Midwest. So if you didn't know, I am from Indiana. I'm from northeastern Indiana, and my husband and I moved down here to Tennessee about 2 years ago. So my favorite part down here is the slower pace of life, the slow living. I love that so much. So where I come from, it is very much work centered. Everybody's working. Down here, everybody is hardworking as well. But in the Midwest, it is very common for people to center their lives around work, and that's all they really focus on. And it's it makes your life go into a fast pace, or if you're not working, you're doing something. There's really no relaxation and downtime. I'm just meaning as a whole, the Midwest is very much more focused on work, and the South is very much focused on living slowly and still working hard. But you'll see people all the time sitting on their front porch in the afternoons. You'll see people taking it a little bit slower on the weekends, and I really, really love that. The one time we were getting our oil change and sitting at the dealership, one of the ladies that was like the sales lady, she was sitting over there, and I heard her talking to one of the people, like one of her coworkers, and she said how much she loved she's been loving sitting out on her front porch in the morning before work. And it's just like those small things. People take extra time to make sure they have time to relax and prioritize slower living. And I really love that. But also, I really love the food. So we live near Nashville, and that is a cultural food hub. That's what people call it. Before we moved here, I had no idea. So we have the Southern Comfort cuisine. We have the Low Country cuisine from like South Carolina. We have the Cajun cuisine and the Creole cuisine from Louisiana. And then we also have all different kinds of food here in Nashville. There's an Ethiopian restaurant. There's Indian restaurants. There's Thai restaurants. There are so many different things. Like you can get any kind of food you would want. And I love that, but I love the Southern food more than anything. And then the people here are so sweet and so kind. Like you'll be standing in line and people really ask you how your day is. And it's not just how is your day good. People actually want to know how you're doing, and it's really heartwarming. I love that. I found my place for sure. I love it here. The next question is, does your dog shed? I see hairs in my clean dishes all the time. I wonder if you do too. Yes, yes, and yes. It is very hard to keep our dog's hair out. So we have a 100-pound Doberman Pinscher. He is huge, so we have hair all the time. I sweep every other day. Sometimes I'll let it go and I'll only sweep like twice a week, and you can definitely see there's hairs. So I try to sweep every other day, and then I dust once a week, and it really helps. And then I also wipe my kitchen counters down every night. I'll just take like a wet washcloth, or I'll use a little spray and I'll wipe everything down to keep all of the dust and hairs away from our cooking area. So that is one thing. And then when I'm cooking, he's not allowed to come into our kitchen, but otherwise, like there's going to be hair everywhere if you have a dog. So you're totally fine. It is so normal. The next question is, what made you realize that being a homemaker is good, not something to look down on? I love this question. Homemaking is something that you should not look down on. It is such an important thing. So I kind of have this background, and I'll just share it really quick. So I used to not be like this. Whenever I was growing up, ever since I was in first grade, I wanted to be a surgeon. I wanted to be a doctor, and that was my path. I was on this until probably my second year of college. So in high school, I did AP classes, advanced placement classes, that I got college credit, and I graduated high school a semester early. And then I went into college being able to graduate an entire year early. And that was because I wanted to do those things and then go to medical school and be an entire year and a half ahead of everybody else that would have been in my same grade, basically, because I wanted my career first, and then I wanted a family. I had no plans. I was like, I want to wait to have a family. I want to wait to have a husband until after medical school, because I was so focused on that. That's where I was like doing this thing. And then I met my husband, which was my boyfriend at the time. We met in high school. We're high school sweethearts. And it was his last half of a year before he graduated. And I was a year younger than him. So I met him and I quickly fell in love. I knew he was the one, and we got pretty serious. So we actually got married when we were only 20 years old. And if you would have told me that whenever I was 16, I would have been like, no way. But it was the best thing I could have ever done in my life. And so ever since, I've been calling myself a recovering feminist, a recovering boss babe, because I am not like that anymore. So I actually I was still like, my career is everything through college. That's when I switched my major to communications, and that's a story for another time. But then I switched, and then I decided, okay, I'm gonna, that would be really nice to have a family. We got married, and I just felt this calling. I've always known that I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to be a wife. We do not have kids, but we want kids in the future. But I've always had this thought process of I want to be a mom and a wife. Even though I wanted my career first, I wanted those things no matter what in my lifetime. So I started getting more serious about it when we moved down here, and it's thanks to the women in our community and the women that are around me. So I was saying earlier, in the Midwest, it's all work all the time. And then, yeah, you have kids and you have a family, but it's your work that's the most important. Or if your family is really important, which this is, family is so important, and it's very hard to explain this, and I'm not trying to upset anybody or tick anyone off. So please, I'm not meaning to do that. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to explain this. But when we moved here, I realized how many women prioritize being a homemaker. And I was starting to go down this road of things were not making me happy. Like, I was not happy trying to climb a ladder. I wasn't happy trying to work for other people. I loved working for myself. I have a very creative entrepreneurial spirit. I'm very driven. And so any job I've ever worked, I felt like I wasn't living to my fullest potential. So I knew that I wanted to start another business, because at that time, I had let my certification of holistic nutrition go. I had graduated college, and I was very lost. My husband and I stopped doing our travel business. And so I was like, what do I do now? And I felt this tug on my heart to focus on our home. And so I started this business. And that's where our motto came from: make your home a priority. And over the last 2 years of having this business and living here in Tennessee and being 4 years into marriage, I have realized that, like, over this last year, I realized what I want is to make my home a priority, make my husband my biggest priority. My marriage is my number one priority. My business is last, like, that's second. And it's really cool that I get to be home and I get to be a homemaker, but I also get to have my own business. But it's talking about homemaking and helping other women and other people do homemaking and prioritize their home. So it's something that it's been a journey for me. It's not something that's happened quickly. People in the community and the women down here around me in Tennessee totally changed my mindset. So a lot of women down here are prioritizing their homes, are prioritizing being a homemaker, even if they do have a job, and they don't look down upon it. As I've grown in my faith over the last 2 years as well, I've realized homemaking is our calling as women. And sometimes, yes, you do have to work, but no matter what, making your house a home, whether it's you and your husband, or you and children and your husband, no matter what, homemaking is what we're called to do. To make the home a special place is absolutely amazing, and it's a ministry. So after growing in my faith and realizing that's what God has called me to do, I knew for sure that that's what I was going to prioritize. And so that's how I don't look down upon it. I've always thought homemaking was amazing, but I used to think it wasn't enough, and it is. It is enough. For me, I get to clean our home, and I get to have it all ready for my husband. I get to wash his clothes and make sure he has nice folded clothes that are clean for work. I get to make him lunch, breakfast, and supper. Like, I get to make him meals that are yummy and warm and nourishing, and that just taking care of him and serving him, and by that serving God and just being this support system for my husband has been the most beautiful and amazing thing. And it is the best job I've ever had in my whole life. And the cool thing is, because when you're homemaking, that doesn't mean that you can't do anything else. And that's why I love blogging and having an online business, because it allows you to be creative and be a really driven person. I am a very driven person, very. And so I had to have an outlet. And by blogging, that allows you to be creative and share things with the world and create a community online without having to sacrifice prioritizing your home. So I know that's not a place that everybody can be in, and not a position that everyone is in. I'm very, very grateful that I get to be in this position. But if you're not, you can still prioritize home, because it really makes a difference in everybody's lives. Okay, that was a lot. I could talk about that topic all by itself for a podcast. So then the next question is, you make a lot of scones. What is your favorite one? What is your husband's? So both my husband and I's favorite scones are the chocolate chip. The sourdough chocolate chip are by far our favorite scones. They are so good. I would say my second favorite scone is my sourdough scotcheroo scones. That recipe is so special to me. So scotcheroos are something that you eat in the Midwest. It's a Midwest treat, and every Midwest mom knows how to make the best ones. So that's my second favorite, because it reminds me of home. And then my husband's second favorite is probably, what did he say? Oh, he said the sourdough lemon poppy seed ones. Those are by far his second favorite. And then he also loves the sourdough cherry scones too, which you can find these on the blog. Just go over to it, plumbrunchhome.com, and then go over to the menu and then find sourdough recipes. And then there's a whole tab that says biscuits and scones. You can find them. There are so many. I started making scones for the blog when I first started it. So I got my sourdough starter going, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try to make scones. I always heard that they were hard to make and just like difficult. And so I've been baking since I was a little girl and I've never made scones. And so whenever I started making them and developing the recipes and telling everybody, hey, it's actually really easy and simple, I was addicted. And then I started doing more and more and more. And it's just a fun way to add like the scotcheroo. Turning foods into a scone is really fun. So that's why I do that. And then what is the biggest highlight of your business in 2024? So the biggest highlight has been the growth. Oh my gosh. So I have been blogging for 5 years now, and I have had 3 blogs. This is my 3rd blog. The other 2 are not online. The first one was a nutrition blog back when I had my holistic nutrition certification, and I did not know what I was doing. So that kind of went downhill. And then I started a second blog, and that one actually was a travel blog, and my husband and I worked on it together. We blogged for a little while. It was probably about 2 to 3 years, and it took off a little bit, but not much. I didn't know enough of what I was doing. And so then when we decided to stop that business, we did not want to travel anymore. I started this one. And ever since, it's been so much different. I've used all of my knowledge from the other 5 years of I'm using my knowledge from all of the things before, but the biggest difference has been of my traffic growing and getting to this point. This blog has gotten to a point where no other blog I've made was giving it to God. I prayed and I gave my business to God. I was like, I'm done pushing it. I'm done willing it to work. I'm done trying to control it. Like, here, this is yours, God, and you do what you want with it. Bless us if that's your will. I asked him to guide me and for people to see him through my content and to just work through me to make people's lives better. And so as soon as I did that and I gave up the control of the business, it took off. And that is by far the biggest highlight, was just giving it to God and letting the rest kind of fall into place as his will. So that was a huge highlight. And by doing that, I got on a new ad network. So if you see ads on the blog and kind of wonder why, those allow me to keep giving you guys free content. So by me having an ad network like Mediavine come onto the blog, they pay me to advertise on there. And so that allows me to write these posts and give them out for free so you guys don't have to pay for them. But I got on a new ad network and it has been huge. It's been so huge. So we have around 20,000 readers per month coming to the blog. It's so exciting. I'm so grateful. So that's the biggest highlight. Okay, the next question is, most common mistake people make with sourdough. So besides not starting, you're right. You've got to get started. If you have not, please don't hold back anymore. I waited 3 months to start my sourdough starter 2 years ago, and I wish I would have just started it. It's so much easier than I expected. The biggest mistake I see is people having dense baked goods and dense bread. This comes from your starter not being active enough and strong enough. So if this is happening, you need to get it out and put it on the counter for 2 days. And then every 12 hours, feed it a 2-to-1 ratio of flour to water. So that means 1 cup of flour to a half of a cup of water. That's the type of ratio. And you want to use unbleached flour and filtered water. If you have reverse osmosis, you want to use the water that's like on your fridge door or in a filter pitcher. The salt can kind of mess with it. But that's the biggest issue I see people having. And then you just need to practice. Just keep practicing. You're going to have some bad loaves. I had bad loaves, and I cut them up, dried them, and turned them into breadcrumbs. I used them for, I made croutons, I made like a ham and cheese breakfast casserole. And so these things, you can use up these like not so good things of bread as you're getting started. It's just like anything, it takes a little bit of practice. And then the next question is, what is your top 3 favorite supper recipes? What about your husband? So let me pull it up. I actually have a section on the blog. So if you go on the home page, I'm going to read it. So if you don't have it up, totally fine. But if you go on the home page and scroll down, I have under my picture Molly's favorite recipes and my husband's favorite recipes. My favorite supper recipes are the Chipotle chicken tacos. It's like a sheet pan recipe, so good. And then also the crockpot chicken enchilada soup from scratch. And then my next favorite is I have a mango chicken taco recipe too. Those are amazing. They're by far my favorite. If you can't tell, I love tacos. My husband's favorite recipes for supper are slow cooker French dip sandwiches, my sloppy Joe Philly cheesesteak, and then he also loves my sourdough calzone / sourdough pizzas. So those are his favorite recipes for supper, and mine as well. So what else did this question say? Yeah, those are our top 3. Okay, next question. What's the biggest change been from the beginning of 2024 to now in your business? So kind of like I said before, the biggest change was me giving God my business and just saying, I trust you, God. This is yours. And I trust you with everything. That's been a huge change. But also the biggest change when I started, let's see, when 2024 rolled around, Plumber and Chum was 1 year old, and I only had the blog and Pinterest. So since then we've added Instagram, Facebook, the podcast, so this podcast, the YouTube channel, and the newsletter. So yeah, we've added 5 different other platforms. So we've turned a blog into the multimedia business. And I've been a little overwhelmed about this at the beginning, but it's really been not too bad. It's added so much more for the business, and that means more growth and more fun, but also more work. So that's been a huge adjustment and change since the beginning of 2024, which I'm so excited about. So the next question is, how did sourdough do against your expectations? Did you expect to use it as much as you do now, or was it intended to be a fun project? So when I started sourdough, I was kind of like a New Year's resolution that I wanted to learn sourdough, and then I also wanted to start making stuff at home from scratch instead of buying them from the store to kind of save us money. So at first it was just supposed to be something to learn, and then it turned into me doing this like project, if you want to say, of choosing 12 things that we usually buy at the store made out of bread or like baked goods, and then turn them into homemade things. So I kind of would eliminate all of that out of our grocery list. But then it turned into, I started developing a few recipes here and there, and it turned into be my number one thing for the blog. So now I do sourdough recipes all the time. I love baking with sourdough. It's my favorite thing. And I love the gut health benefits from it. So yeah, sourdough has grown much bigger in our lives than I expected. The next the next, oh my goodness. The next question is, did you go to culinary school? No, I did not. So I am completely self-taught and taught by my mom. So as early as I can even remember, I would stand on a stool with my mom and help her in the kitchen. And that's how I learned how to bake. That's how I learned to do everything. And then as I was growing up, I read cookbooks. Yes, read them as a little girl. My mom would check cookbooks out for me at the library from the adult area. And I would sit and read every page of cookbooks. So I learned a lot, and I was basically studying how to make different recipes. And so I learned that way. And then I also watched tons and tons and tons of cooking shows. So all kinds of baking and cooking channels. And so that was my mom and I's favorite thing to do together when I was growing up. And so I learned so many techniques and so much stuff. I was absorbing it all. So between reading, watching, and doing cooking and baking, like in the kitchen with my mom, my life kind of revolved around that. And I never realized that until like the last year. I was like, how do I know how to do all of this? And it's because my whole life I've been doing this in the background, and I never knew. I never thought I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be in the medical field. I didn't think cooking was anything. So yeah, that's really cool. And I love that. I kind of love that I didn't go to culinary school. My background is from my family, like my mom, and just like my childhood. It's very special. And then the last question is, how do you develop recipes? Do you make them from scratch or just modify other people's? So I develop my recipes from scratch, but sometimes I will get some like ideas out of magazines or Pinterest, but not for the actual recipe ingredients and instructions. I never do that. Instead, what I do, besides like that one soup recipe I was talking about, what I do is I get these ideas, but most of the time, like 90% of the time, I come up with these things from little things that I see. So it'll be really weird. I'll be looking through an old cookbook, or I'll be looking through an issue of Southern Living magazine, and they'll have like I don't even know. Let's just take like a cookie recipe, and then I'll think, ooh, chocolate. And then I'll start thinking, and then I kind of come up with something else. So these are definitely ideas that I've come up with, or I get inspiration for online, but then I develop the recipes from scratch by myself. I don't even know how to answer this. So I have been developing recipes since I was really young, not even knowing it. So my mom has a ton of my old recipes that I've created at home, and it's just so crazy. When she reminded me that I have recipes that I made when I was little, I was like, what? No, I don't. And I do. It's so cool. So I kind of just like, I think it's from all of my knowledge and all my background of cooking and baking. I will come into the kitchen and I know ahead of time what goes into a cookie. I know what goes into a cake. I know what goes into a stir fry. And then I know the ratios. And it's crazy because I've never studied food. I've never studied these things. But from a lifetime of cooking and doing these things, I've been able to, and I mean, I'm in my 20s, so it's not a huge lifetime, but I have been able to know the basis of all dishes, or most dishes, and then I also know the ratios of like how much liquid to dry ingredients a cake needs. So these things are just like sentient nature, and I've always watched my mom and my grandma cook by just like putting things in a pan, never measuring, and so that's how I've learned to cook. And I really think that doing that and not measuring and being able to just toss things in and look at the texture of the food that you're making, I think that taught me a lot about what different things are going to look like. So it's just been a lot of experience, and I just get in the kitchen. I know the ratios. I know what goes into things. Sometimes I have to do a little bit of research of like how to make a cake more moist, and kind of like doing some preliminary and doing some like pre-recipe developing like research, if you want to say. But that's very little. But I'll just come into the kitchen, I'll do my base, I'll write down my recipe that I think is gonna work, and then I make it twice. Not the same day, but I'll make it twice to make sure my ratios are good. Sometimes it'll be perfect. Sometimes I'll have to come back into the kitchen and make it again, and like just tweak a few little things to get it perfect. But yeah, that's how I develop recipes, and it's really weird because I've never thought of myself as a recipe developer until last year. And I was like, hey, what the heck? I do know how to do something. I have a skill, and I've been doing it my whole life. I just didn't pay attention. So that is how I develop recipes. But that is all the questions I have today. I am so excited to do this again. My husband just this morning said he would love to come on and do a Q&A with me. So maybe that's going to be in the future here in 2025. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed listening. Make sure you follow this podcast show wherever you're listening and give it a 5-star rating. It helps so much, and it pushes this podcast episode out so more people can listen to it. And then also, if you are watching this on the Plum Branch Home YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss one of the video uploads. But until next time, go make your home a priority. Chat next Wednesday.